What is up, everyone? This is Zach with the East Coast Rams, and I have a special guest today, Blaine with the Turf Show Times. Blaine, how you doing?
Doing great, Zach. Thanks for having me on. Yeah, it's I think the second time now I've filled in for Ashton. So if you better not make it a regular thing, I'm gonna be taking over here pretty soon. But no, it's
Yeah, he
good to be on, and yeah, happy, excited to talk some Rams football. So
yeah he can't take too many vacations, he might get cut. No, I'm just kidding, Ashton. I hope you have a good week off. It's happy anniversary to you and your wife. So I hope you guys are celebrating it well. So that's kind of the good news of the podcast. Now we're going to talk about kind of like the crappy news of the podcast where the Rams just can't seem to get anything going. We're in week two already. We just finished week two and we're 0-2. First game didn't win, but we all thought we kind of had like this moral victory behind us because we were going up against Super Bowl contenders and we kept it close to the very end. And now after week two, getting completely destroyed by the Arizona Cardinals. What is happening with this team, Blaine?
yeah, I think it's obviously. I think you look at the injuries, especially on the offensive side of the ball. Obviously, you're without out that kind of the center of the offensive line with Steve Avila being out, and then Puka Nacua is kind of the heart of the offense. Everything kind of runs through him. He's on injured reserve. It just seems like there's all these shuffling pieces, and with that, it's kind of tough to build any sort of cohesiveness. But it's just. I said it this week. It's just, I mean, the Reds have gotten blown out in the McVay area before. They lost pretty big to Baltimore a couple years ago. They lost to Dallas pretty big last year. But the Cardinals have always been that team that McVay and the Rams kind of get right against. It's kind of been he's had a lot of success against them, and so I don't think anybody saw 41-10 in the cards.
Yeah, and I mean, and really, this Cardinals team doesn't seem like it's changed a whole lot from the last couple of years. Obviously, their biggest um, uh, their biggest person that came into the fruition this year is obviously Marvis Harrison Jr., who was basically kind of their one of their keys to victory. I mean, he was stretching the field, he was making our CBs just completely useless. So there's that. I mean, and obviously not having Aaron Donald really kind of, I think, affected this game as well. I think Murray was always afraid of him, and I think that fear just allowed him to mess up, and not having that fear in him allowed him to move throughout the field, even under pressure, and making pretty remarkable plays, scrambling.
Yeah, I mean there were like you said. I think Aaron Donald was definitely missed on the defensive line. It wasn't very often that Aaron Donald was going to miss a sack opportunity, and there were just several times it seemed on Sunday where whether it was Braden Fisk, Michael Hoyt, Jared Verse, where they'd have Murray just in their grasp and just so close to a sack, but just couldn't quite finish the play. And more times than not, that ended up a big play the other way. And it's kind of hard to think. What if they sack Murray on a couple of those, or come up with a negative play? Maybe the result was maybe a little closer, maybe a little different in some spots. It just kind of seemed like it was one of those days where I kind of think the Trey McBride touchdown where James Conner fumbled it and Trey McBride recovered it in the end zone. That was kind of just the stamp on how the day went.
It always feels like, just like the 49ers, how every time they get a tipped ball or they get a fumble or a possible interception, like it always goes in their way of a positive attitude. And the Rams always seem to get the opposite. They can never get the fumble recovery. They drop the interception. They the fumble recovery goes to the other team and it's a touchdown. Like it's those just bad luck situations that the Rams seem to be consistently going down. And you kind of look at the stat sheet, and Kyler Murray only threw the ball 21 times. They only rushed the ball 21 times, and they were still able to put up, the 40 points that they did. So and they had control the whole game. The Rams were never in this game at all. You had two highlight spots. Really was the first play of the game with Corum's return. Thought we were going to get some momentum, and then Rams 3 and out. and then the nice throw by Stafford to D-Rob for that really long, 40-yard pass.
Yeah.
Those are really it. That's the highlights of the game.
Yeah, it's just after the opening kickoff, it kind of felt like maybe hey maybe they can get something going, get an early lead, and kind of go from there. And yeah, for them to not get that, not take advantage of that was really disappointing. Especially that they on the first play, I think Kyron Williams had a nice 8-yard run. So you have 2nd and 2. The offense looks like it might be rolling, and then you don't get another yard after that. And had they maybe been able to score points on an opening drive, get a touchdown or whatnot. And the 4th down play call wasn't even bad. I think more times than not you would expect Cooper Kupp to pick up 2 yards in that situation. I think you can talk about maybe the downfield blocking on that play maybe not being as good as it needed to be. Maybe Kupp's lost a little bit. Maybe if that's Puka Nacua, he has a little bit more toughness, a little bit more explosiveness. Maybe he picks that up. But yeah, it's just. And then they punt it away. The Cardinals go down, score a really tight touchdown that I think if it's called not a touchdown, probably it's one of those kind of either way type plays. And the Rams go 3-and-out on the very next drive, and on the first play, Kyler Murray finds Marvin Harrison for a touchdown. So it's just once things kind of started to snowball, they snowballed really quickly, and it was. At one point, the Rams were at midfield and looked like they might be able to take an early lead, and the next thing you know, it's 14-0.
Yeah, I mean it's crazy, and even when we get to halftime, like it was what 21-3 or something like that. Like it felt like the Rams needed something coming out of this, and just never had anything happen. I mean, the defense just kind of imploded on itself. They were ineffective pretty much the entire time. You see, the one I think positive sign of the defense is that you do see what Brandon Fisk can do. You see what Jared Verse can do when they're a little bit more disciplined. I mean, there was that one. I mean, they were bringing pressure and they were getting Murray out of the pocket, and they had chances to stop the run or stop, Murray multiple times, and they just couldn't make a tackle. I mean, the amount of tackles they missed on one play, Jared Verse missed Murray twice. Like the amount of missed tackles in this was just insane for a defense. Get it, they're young. Get it that they're not as tightly grouped as we've seen Rams defenses in the past, but they got to clean that up if they want to have any success going down this season.
Yeah, I think coming into the year, obviously, being without Aaron Donald, I think everybody kind of expected maybe, this is a young group. Obviously, that there's going to be those early season bumps, and maybe that's what this is. Like you said, you see the potential of Jared Verse, but even in week 1 against the Lions, you kind of saw some of that undisciplined play containing the edge in the run game, and you kind of saw that a little bit again this past week, and then it kind of extends into the missed tackles, but. Yeah, it just comes down to doing the small things, doing the small things right, doing the little things and executing. I mean, this is a defense that the ethos of it is supposed to be limiting explosive plays, and like you said, the Cardinals had, like you said, Murray only threw like 21 times and only had 21 rushes, but they still scored 41 points, and a lot of that is because the defense is just consistently giving up these big explosive plays, and you just can't do that.
Yeah, for sure. So let's stick with that defense for a minute, because you actually had an article this week on the Turf Show Times about Chris Shula, and is he leaning too much into the Brandon Staley's defensive scheme? Do you want to kind of break this down a little bit on why you did this?
Yeah, I think it's just when the Rams moved on from Morris, I think Chris Shula was I don't want to say an obvious choice, but I think a big reason why he was promoted was because of his connection to Brandon Staley, and obviously we know that scheme is something that Sean McVay really, I guess, became obsessed with after 2018 and that matchup with Vic Fangio. And so I think the whole idea of bringing in Chris Shula was let's get back to sort of what we wanted to be on defense. I think we know Raheem Morris came in, learned Brandon Staley's system on the fly, kind of took Staley's stuff and mixed in some of his own things, and which was great. The defense performed. I think there was obviously some frustrations, but for the most part, the defense performed admirably. But bringing in Chris Shula, he has this connection to John Carroll, similar to Brandon Staley, and yeah. So I think the idea of promoting Chris Shula was to kind of get back to that Brandon Staley that Brandon Staley identity, and I think just kind of you look at Brandon Staley's track record over the last 3 years since he left the Rams, and that was a defense that when he was with the Chargers consistently struggled against the run. Kind of got away from it got away from what it was in 2020, and it never kind of lived up to that 2020 potential that got him the Chargers head coaching job in the first place. And I think you kind of see some of the similar issues that with Chris Shula's defense right now, as you saw with Brandon Staley's defense the last couple of years. I mean, this is a defense right now that is allowing a 55% success rate, I think, against the run, which simply it just can't happen. You're giving up too many easy yards that way. And I mean, we saw in overtime against the Lions, the Lions certainly have to work on that touchdown drive. They were able just to hand the ball off to Dave Montgomery and march down the field. And I think similarly this past week against the Cardinals, the Rams don't have the cornerbacks like a Jalen Ramsey that's going to make that play in the passing game. So when you're setting the Cardinals up in these favorable situations because they're getting easy yards on the ground, you're kind of setting yourself up for failure.
I mean, especially when you put someone like Marvin Harrison Jr. with someone like Trey White, like not dissing Trey White at all, but like he's not a young spring chicken like he is. Like I don't think he can keep up with Marvin Harrison Jr. Like Marvin Harrison Jr. is just young. He's just built for that speed, and he just burned him so many different times. And so that's what the Rams are. They're really allowing the explosive plays to happen. And then with the run game, like you said, like with the Lions, they gave up 163 yards, and then with the Cardinals, it was what 230 yards. So they're giving up so many yards in the run game, and they have to be able to figure that part out. If not, they're just going to continue to lose in these dramatic ways because they cannot stop the run.
Yeah, and I don't want to be hyperbolic or anything, but the Rams are 0-2, and it's the first time they've been 0-2 since 2011. Back when I guess we would call the dark days. I mean, and I think
the dark days.
I don't think I've seen a Rams run defense this bad since then. It's just you have. I know that the run game is kind of overrated. I think a little bit, but at the end of the day, in the NFL, you still have to be able to stop the run, and if you don't, it's just you're making things way too easy on offenses. And I think over the last couple of years in the NFL with NFL offenses, you're kind of seeing a resurgence in a focus on the run game. So if you're just giving up those easy yards again, like you're putting yourself behind.
For sure. Do you think the Rams are bringing too much pressure against the quarterback now? Like I know at first, like we kept saying they need to put more pressure. Do you think they're putting too much and not letting their linebackers kind of play back a little bit more in coverage?
I don't think so, because they're not blitzing at a high rate. I think Shula is only blitzing at like a 15.8% clip, which is half as much as Raheem Morris blitzed last year. So it's good that they're getting the quarterback with 4. I think Jared Verse has been a really nice. I don't want to say a surprise, because we I think everybody kind of expected him to come in and have an immediate impact, but it's been nice to have that presence on the edge that he's brought. I think it's getting more consistent production from guys like Kobe Turner, who we kind of expected to take that next step, and maybe has started off a little bit slow. And if they can start getting more of that interior pressure and staying more disciplined in their rush lanes, I think that would go a long way for them.
So if you had to choose which was our weakness really this weekend, would it be on the offense or would it be on the defense? Our special teams, I think, played well. I mean, our punting was pretty on point. Our returns were fine. So special teams, I think right now is okay. I feel like that was the biggest problem with us last year. Now, who are you going to put the blame on? Stafford and McVay on the offense, or Shula in the defense?
I think you have to go. It's tough because the offense is missing so many pieces. I mean, the offensive line isn't what people kind of thought it would be, what it was projected to be, kind of coming into the year. You're obviously missing Puka Nacua, so there's all these missing pieces. Meanwhile, the defense is only really missing Darius Williams, but at the same time, it's very young. You have a first-time coordinator. There's not a lot of expectation there. But at the same time, I think I would put a little bit more of the blame on the offense, just because of the expectation is there. I mean, you have guys like Cooper Kupp, who granted did get hurt towards the end of the first half. Matthew Stafford's a guy that you expect to be able to carry the roster a little bit. McVay's a veteran coach at this point, so I think that's the unit you would expect to step up in these situations. And I mean, when you start the game at midfield, that should result in points on the opening drive 10 out of 10 times. That's you're not going to get many more favorable situations than that. And then after that, I think they go 3 and out on the next 2 drives. And then towards the end of the half, they're unable to get in the end zone. And yeah, so I think I think you put a little bit more of the blame on the offense, but that's not to say the defense is holding up their end of the bargain either.
Agreed. So now we're going to go to the offense, because there was another article that you wrote that, again, I really liked, and I think that we should highlight it a little bit more. This goes to the offensive side, and is McVay doing enough for the offensive line? I mean, really going into the Lions, we knew we weren't going to have players. I mean, Alaric Jackson, he was already suspended for 2 weeks. We're going to get him back this week. Rob Havenstein, he was out. So we were already 2 starters down going into the Lions game. And then, like you mentioned kind of at the start of the show, Avila went down. Dotson left with a boot. Joe Jackson he shifted, but he even was a little nicked up after the Lions game. And now you have this game where now we'll talk about the injuries coming up from this game. But do you think, how did you go about this article about, is McVay doing enough, and what can he do moving forward to get the Rams into a better position to win?
Yeah, I think there's multiple levels here, because I did catch a little bit of heat for, I guess, the topic itself, just because all the injuries at the end of the day. I think in the NFL, obviously, you need a healthy offensive line to be able to function. Whether it's I think you look at the best quarterbacks in the NFL, they need at the end of the day, they need protection. The best offensive schemes work best behind a good offensive line. And then just kind of on another level too, you go back to the Lions game. The Rams kind of started that game down 17-3. So you're down 17-3. That's going to result in more pure drop back passing situations. And then this game, in the blink of an eye, they're down 21-0. So there's different levels, and it's pretty complex. But at the same time, McVay has been here before. You go back to 2022, where they have these historic amount of injuries. Like, a situation like this shouldn't necessarily come to McVay by surprise. I guess he should know. He should be more. He should be better prepared to handle a situation like this. And I guess you look at a team like the New Orleans Saints right now, and what Clint Kubiak is doing with them. I mean, yes, they have a strong pedigree with guys up front, but that was an offensive line that coming into the season was projected to be the second worst offensive line in the NFL. And you have Kubiak scheming around that with whether it's with play action, with screens, things like that. And obviously, if you're down 21-0, you're not going to be able to run. You're not going to be able to run play action. But at the same time, before it ever gets to 21-0, the Rams have run one play action pass on their first 3 possessions last week. Through the first 2 weeks of the season, Warren McClendon leads all offensive linemen in true pass sets. Matthew Stafford leads the NFL in pure drop back passes. It's just. It just doesn't seem like McVay has done enough to adjust the offense to the situation. And I think we've seen that before. You go back to the Green Bay Packers game last year, and you have I think it was Zach Thomas playing left tackle, and Thomas just isn't getting any help throughout that entire game. And it's the same thing last week. Warren McClendon is really struggling on that left side, and you have McVay running 11 personnel 98% of the time through the first 2 weeks. He's not putting another tight end over there to help chip or anything. It's just so I love McVay more than anybody. I think he's a great head coach. He's a great offensive mind. Obviously, I think he's a top 5 head coach in the NFL at the very least. But at the same time, I think there are things that he could do, whether it's move the pocket a little bit in the screen game. I mean, losing Steve Avila hurts because he is such a presence in the screen game, but that doesn't mean you have to completely abandon it either. So there's a lot of different levels to it, but at the same time, I think McVay could do more to help those guys up front.
I completely agree. I mean, maybe shifting outside of the 11 personnel a little bit more often. I know that's what they're most comfortable in, and that's fine. But, really, if you want to get that running game started, you're going to need some more help. And bringing in some additional tight ends to kind of help open that space up for you, I think is going to be beneficial. I mean, right now we're down to having Tyler Johnson, Demarcus Robinson, Tutu Atwell, and Winnington. Those are our receivers right now. That's it. You don't have Puka Nacua. You don't have Cooper Kupp. Like, this is it. And if you don't start having your tight ends help chip those shots, now you're relying on Kyron Williams or Ronnie Rivers to do those chip shots, which we saw them do in these last 2 weeks to give Matthew Stafford enough time, where now you've lost another weapon because they're now having to play that defensive spot. So it's very interesting. I do think that they need to try to figure out a scheme to help this offensive line. I think it almost just makes it seem like they're trying to do the same things with the second and third string offensive line mixed in with some of their first string. And it's not producing anything. And I would have thought that we would have tried something else in the second half to try to get us a little bit more competitive to see what's working and what's not.
Yeah, I 100% agree, and I think it'll be interesting this week. I think, I mean, McVay should know what the situation is and kind of what he has at his disposal, and obviously they're staring 0-3 in the face. So this is, if it doesn't get much more must win than a division game at home against your biggest rival when you're 0-2. So it'll be interesting to see how deep in his bag McVay gets this week, because their back is against the wall, and you can't just kind of keep trying the same stuff and hoping it sticks when last week when you're down to your third string left tackle, and all these other moving pieces, it didn't work. You can't just trot out the same stuff again.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. All right. So I think that's going to wrap up our recap of the Cardinals game. Just FYI, if you haven't subscribed to our YouTube channel, please do. youtube.com/@EastCoastRams. Really appreciate everyone who's subscribing, liking, and watching our content. We are consistently getting better and bringing in more and more guests on the show. So big thanks to Blaine again for being on and joining me. So let's get into some of the news. Like we mentioned, there's a lot of injuries going on. As far as some injury updates, Cooper Kupp, he is out for an extended period of time. McVay said today on Wednesday that as of right now that he will not be placed on IR, but he is in a cast and a boot. Blaine, do you know, and I had to think about this for a second, if players put on IR, are they still allowed to be on the field during a game?
I think so, because I think, if I remember right, I think Cooper Kupp was on the field to start, or at least on the sideline last year, and I think Aaron Rodgers spent some time on the sideline as well for the Jets last year.
I couldn't remember what those weird rules are with the NFL.
Yeah.
So that's good. I just didn't know, because a lot of times he's like Coach Cooper Kupp, so it could make sense to keep him on the sideline, but obviously not suited up. Let's see. There's just a laundry list. Jonah Jackson. So we have another starter offensive lineman who, we brought in the offseason, paid him money, and he's having his same shoulder injury. He was placed on IR today. John Johnson III, He has a fractured scapula. He will be out for 4 to 6 weeks, also placed on IR. The Rams are running out of spots on IR to allow them to come back after that stint. So they're playing Cooper Cup
Yeah,
kind of safe in that matter.
yeah, it's kind of sad how many injuries they've had. It's only been 2 weeks that they're already at the point where they're having to um to to kind of debate on whether or not to put players on IR because just so they're able to bring them back at some point in the season. It's
And
really
we were
sad.
like this last. We were this way last week. We had these same conversations last week about, oh man, they only have 8. They only have 8 returns from IR. Like, what are they going to do? And then this week we have 2, should be probably 3 that should be going on IR, and they shifted to 2. The only other injury to update is Josh Riccardi, our kicker. He has a groin issue, but McVay said that is day to day, and he should be good to go. I will note that the Rams did bring on a kicker to the practice squad just in case it gets more aggressive. So
As if the Rams kicking situation didn't need any more drama after the last couple of years.
I know, and again, like that was the more consistent thing over the last 2 weeks is our special teams have actually played pretty well.
Yeah.
So you know, who knew kicking the ball a couple times a game would cause a groin injury, but whatever. Yeah, so other news. Okay, so the big thing that happened really today, I think everyone kind of was looking at this whole Bryce Young thing within the last 24, 48 hours, that he is now being benched by Carolina. Rumors were floating that the Rams should sign him or should trade for him. I was thinking just purely draft picks. I think we should bring him, put him under Stafford for this year, get him developed, things like that. And then today, everyone's saying, "Oh no, we should do this triple trade deal where we get, we get Young, Stafford goes to Miami, and then what is it? Miami or Carolina would get 2 draft picks, one from
Yeah.
the Rams and one from Miami." Insane, because they also think that we should also give them a 3rd round draft pick for this. But what are you thinking about all this? Me personally, it's just a crazy 0-2, rumor mill down the road.
Yeah, that's kind of where I'm at as well on it. I personally like. I know Matthew Stafford's getting older. Obviously, at 0-2, there's gonna be these types of discussions after kind of all the contract talks over kind of before training camp and the deal that eventually got done. It's essentially a 1-year deal, so there's not necessarily Rams aren't necessarily tied to Matthew Stafford long term, but at the same time, I think this is a team that still wants to compete in 2025. I think this is. If they do decide to go in another direction and embrace the rebuild, I think they need not just 1 first round pick but 2 first round picks to get to part ways with Matthew Stafford, so that they are better equipped for a potential retool or rebuild or whatever you want to call it. And then I think, if the Rams were going to sign or trade for a young quarterback, this past offseason would have been the time to do it. You had Justin Fields, who was available. You had Zach Wilson, who was available, and while those two, and even Kenny Pickett was available. These are all former for first round pick quarterbacks, and Justin Fields and Zach Wilson both have their issues, but at the very least, you're getting the quarterback with some sort of athletic upside and a big arm, and that's just not something that Bryce Young provides. He's an average athlete with an average arm that really excels with his timing and anticipation, and not only that, he has an extremely small frame. So I think at his best, he's a Tua Tagovailoa kind of caliber quarterback if he hits a ceiling. And right now, that looks to be like a huge if, and I don't think that's a quarterback that's necessarily going to take you where you want to be. So, yeah, if they're going to make a move for a young quarterback this past offseason, would have been time to do it. I don't think Bryce Young is that guy, and if this does turn into a disaster type of a season at this point, you might as well just wait for the first round and take a guy that you really want.
Yeah, for sure. I agree. I mean, Archie Manning's just a couple years away. So um, one of those things. I think the real question is does number one, does McVay or even Stafford want to move on? I mean, like McVay has this whole thing. Like, I don't think he could survive a season without Stafford right now. If he gave up Stafford, he's lost. I mean, he's lost. I mean, I really do think. I think this would be the end of the Sean McVay era if they traded Stafford right now. Um, I think he would probably move on and not be with the Rams in the next year. Maybe he would give it one more shot with with a young quarterback, but Stafford brings that familiarity, that comfort level that he didn't have. It didn't seem like he had with Jared Goff. He wanted a more veteran quarterback who knew what he was doing. And then Stafford, he is getting up there. Can he go to a new team mid-season and not with no chemistry and still perform that magic that he has provided for the Rams and even with the Lions when he was there?
Yeah, I think like you go back to kind of the I guess contract talks before training camp, and it got right up to that deadline, and at the end, it's Sean McVay that goes in that room that helps get that deal across the line. So to your point, I think these two guys have a really tight, really strong relationship, and I obviously I think when it came to the contract situation this offseason, it was McVay that kind of went in that room and got things across the line and kind of went to bat for Stafford and said, hey, like I need my quarterback for the start of training camp. This has to get done. At the same time, I think McVay said at the time, some tough conversations were had, some things that need to be said that needed to be said were said, um, and I think that's why we're essentially kind of on that 1 year deal type thing where they are going to take this 1 year at a time. I think you kind of go back, you look at you go to the Stafford documentary that released this past offseason, and you kind of heard Stafford say like he kind of wants to be in the Hall of Fame. He knows what he needs to do to get there, and if he doesn't feel that the Rams if he doesn't feel the Rams have a roster that can provide him with that, you know, whether it's midseason going to the Dolphins or even after the season going to a team that's kind of just a quarterback away, does he consider other options? And then to your point, what does McVay do if that becomes a reality? It's certainly a hopefully a conversation that's had in 6 months. But if things get worse, it's one that's going to be forced on us a little sooner.
Yeah, and I mean, I feel like that again just dumps more and more bad news to this fan base that's already feeling so much dread. The only thing that we have in comfort is that Matthew Stafford is a Ram. He is healthy, and hopefully he can lead us to some victories moving forward. He will get some help. The Rams are signing former Lions wide receiver Quintez Cephas to the practice squad. I don't know too much about him other than he was with the Lions. He played 22 games, um, 37 catches for 568 yards. 6'1", former
Yeah, I
Lion.
mean, at the very least, he provides that past chemistry of Stafford. I think I remember maybe it was his first or second year in the league. He kind of had some positive moments. So at the very least, he gives them somebody kind of like I said with that past chemistry, um, and this is a team that they really need some wide receiver depth. So at least he gives them that as well.
And it's just so crazy that we need that. Like that wide receiver depth felt pretty good going into the season, and then you lose Puka and you lose Cooper Cup, and now you're like feel like you're in shambles again. So, and then they did also bring on offensive lineman Justin Deddick. He was on the practice squad, or he wasn't on the practice squad. He was an undrafted rookie who didn't make the cut at the end, and now is back. He actually made it to the 53-man roster. So, more O line depth. All right. So I guess really the only thing I have to talk about is it's 49ers week. I mean, this is, we talked a lot about the Cardinals, a lot about the news, but it is 49ers week. Do you have any, I mean, the 49ers didn't really look great this past week against the Vikings. They're 1-1. They don't have Christian McCaffrey. They may not have Deebo Samuel. Ayuk is still not at his, peak football performance. Brock Purdy, he's a good manager, but when you don't have those weapons, what is that going to look like? What are your thoughts going into 49ers week?
Yeah, I think I'm cautiously optimistic, which is surprising coming off of a 41-10 loss to the Cardinals. But to your point, the 49ers are less than 100%. They're going to be without Deebo Samuel. Christian McCaffrey will obviously be out. I think McVay is going to have this team ready to. I think a little bit more mentally focused coming off of probably what, like I said earlier, maybe one of the more surprising results of his coaching career. I kind of see this like there were those times during the Jeff Fisher era where like the Rams would have a bad loss, but you knew that next week they were gonna come back with a different mindset. And I kind of see this week being like that, where maybe they can come up with a surprising result. Things are maybe kind of going their way on the 49ers side of things, being without, like I said, Deebo and Christian McCaffrey. But at the end of the day, it comes down to, like we said earlier, doing those little things right. The Rams, I think, have 30 some odd missed tackles through the first 2 weeks, and that's kind of been that has been the Achilles heel with the Rams when it comes to playing the 49ers in the past. So they have to be able to tackle. Kyle Shanahan is a coach that isn't afraid to run the ball 90 times a game if he has to. So they have to do better in the run game. But yeah, I'd say I don't know if I'm expecting to win, but I think I am surprisingly cautiously optimistic.
I'm with you on that. I'm almost feeling like this is going to play out more similar to the Lions game than it is going to be to the Cardinals game. And I think it does bring it down to that quarterback position. I think you're going to look at Brock Purdy as more of that Jared Goff in the pocket, not going to scramble as so much. He will use his legs. Jared Goff can use his legs too. And be able to get a couple first downs, but I don't think they're going to be able to extend the plays and be as elusive as someone like Murray, as someone who's more of that mobile quarterback position. So I am very hopeful in that. And again, I think that we do have the quality talent. I do like what we've seen from Demarcus Robinson. I do like what we've seen from Tyler Johnson. Is Tutu Atwell going to be able to step up and be what we want him to be or need him to be? Is Whittington going to step up and be that, that tough wide receiver that we need? Because, McVay's receivers, they have to block. Tutu Atwell, he's not a blocker. So really we need those big bodies to block and be able to catch the ball at the same time, which was what Puka and Cooper Kupp were known for over their careers.
Yeah, and I think a big thing too is, and I'll be interested to see kind of how he plays. But Alaric Jackson, who kind of returns at left tackle, so you're going to have a steady presence on that left side. Next to Alaric Jackson is kind of where things will get a little dicey. I think Logan Bruss is the projected starter at left guard right now. Bo Limmer's played respectably well as center, and then obviously you have kind of two stable presences on the right side. But I think having Alaric Jackson there at left tackle, having that steady presence, that is something that this offense has really missed, especially last week. So having him back will hopefully help the offense a little bit. Maybe give Stafford a little bit more confidence in to stand in the pocket. I think at the end of the day, though, like you said, it's going to come down to these wide receivers, and can they step up? Can Tutu Atwell get open? Can these guys create separation and make catches when they need to? Because I mean you're without Puka Nacua and Cooper Kupp, where even when Cooper Kupp was out last year in the first 4 games, it was Puka Nacua who had this great offseason, and everybody was hyping up all summer, who really stepped up and went on to have a historic season. Can that be Jordan Whittington, who it's unfair to put those Puka Nacua expectations on him, but he was also a guy that the media hyped up all summer long as this guy that was really exceeding his 6th round draft status.
Exactly. And, again, I want to see some different stuff. Like if stuff isn't working, let's try. Let's go back to jet sweeps. I mean, D-Rob was doing some great jet sweeps last season. You have these players that can do these things. Let's do it. Let's switch it up. Let's not just do the same plays every time. I love running the ball and I love Kyron Williams. Let's get Blake Corum in there. I mean, we waited too late to bring Blake Corum in at the very end. At that point, I'm like, why even play him? Put Ronnie Rivers in or somebody like that. Like, why were we putting, Blake Corum, potentially, more of our the future, dual back position, whatever, putting him at risk when we have Ronnie Rivers who can play that kind of position. Even though I don't want Ronnie Rivers to get injured in it, that's not my point. But again, you're when you have when you're worried about Stafford being in, and now you're putting in Blake Corum. I didn't really understand that.
Yeah, how McVay managed the end of the game is certainly questionable. I mean, this is a coach that rests his starters in pointless preseason games, and yet you had Matthew Stafford and Blake Corum, a guy that they drafted in the third round, going into the game down 41-10. But
I think that's a Stafford choice. I don't think that was really McVay. I don't think there was a question. There was no discussion point. Stafford put his helmet on and walked onto the field, and
yeah,
McVay's not going to call him back. So
no,
that's the heart of Stafford that we love.
For sure. But no, like you said, let's see some of these boot rollouts to the right or whatnot, and just get Stafford on the move. Use his agility a little bit. Like you said, run some of these jet sweeps. We saw it got called back in week 1, but Jordan Whittington actually scored on a jet sweep against the Lions. Let's get him involved in that way. Get used to Atwell speed like that as well. Let's just try these different things rather than the same old drop back passing game that just hasn't worked so far. And for the Rams to win this game, McVay is going to have to get into his bag and pull out some things that pull out some creative ideas. And we know they're there, but it's just about calling those things in game.
And I hope Davis Allen's is about to be back. I think he's been kind of had a back bug, something going on with his back. He needs to get back. Like, he needs to get in there and do some plays, because he had some really good shining spots last season. And again, I think he's someone who can get involved in this pass game and this blocking game and things like that, and could be successful as well.
For sure. I think we've never seen a McVay team in this spot. It's going to be interesting to see kind of how he handles it. We saw how he unraveled in 2022, and I think he learned a lot from that season. Like I said, I think I am cautiously optimistic, because I think this is I think this Rams team is going to respond the right way. And even if they don't come out with a win, I think like you said, it's going to feel a lot like the Lions game where the team did give everything and give 100%. Whereas this past week, it was the Rams just did not match the energy on the other side, and I think it'll be quite the opposite this week.
Yeah, but definitely these last 2 losses doesn't help that the fact that the home field advantage is going to be completely flipped on its head. When it's normally 60-70% 49ers fans, you're looking at 70-80% fans probably in that SoFi Stadium. So if you are a Rams fan and can attend, just go attend, just to save some red ocean space in there. But yeah, it's going to be an interesting game. I think it is going to be a lot closer than what we saw this past week. So I'm really hopeful in that. Hopefully the defense can kind of clean things up. Like I said, as long as they can kind of, not allow Brock Purdy to extend the play, I think that's going to be a lot better for them in the long term. And hopefully we get a Kel Witherspoon. I mean, he's a player who, he wasn't activated for the Cardinals game, because they just brought him back on to the practice squad last week. I do hope that they do elevate him. I think they need him in this kind of depleted backfield that they have, especially at least until, Darius Williams is able to get back and we can kind of fix up some of our secondary injuries that we got going on.
Yeah. And like you said earlier, we saw last week, guys like Jared Verse, Brandon Fisk really get after. They did get after Kyler Murray, but Murray, as we know, is just kind of, he's so elusive that he's able to get out of some of those situations. And like you said, Brock Purdy is mobile, but he's not elusive like that. We saw how this defense really made Jared Goff kind of shaky there in week 1, and you get Brock Purdy in those situations, and he is susceptible to making mistakes. If you can get a turnover or 2, or the those are possessions that you're stealing, and opportunities for points and whatnot, and then those are types of plays that can really change games. And but yeah, I mean, this is defensive front that we've seen the ability to get pressure, but if they can kind of finish on those this week and make pretty uncomfortable, I think they can get some plays to go their way.
Yeah. I mean, so if you go look at the historical sacks, only about 11% of teams who are 0-2 make it into the playoffs. There are a lot of 0-2 teams out there that are kind of surprising. You got the Bengals, another 0-2 team. There are several other ones out there. The Ravens, aren't they 0-2 as well?
Yeah.
And so like you have some of these teams that were coming in as playoff favorites, and they're also 0-2. So it's going to be really interesting. And the Rams do tend to break the odds. You look at them last season when they were 3-6 and then made it into the playoffs. Like they can get on a hot hand and get on a hot roll to get to make something happen, even if they lost the last 2 weeks, and even if they missed this week. I mean, realistically, when we looked at the schedule, most people thought they were going to be 1-2 by week 4.
Yeah,
just because of Detroit and 49ers.
Yeah, exactly. And the season's definitely not over yet. I mean, there's a lot of people writing off the Rams, and I don't see this McVay. I don't see a McVay team quitting. This is a team that's going to fight to the end, whether they're whether they're 3-6 again or worse. I think this is a team that will fight every single week. And I think kind of looking at the schedule, we saw that week 5 bye and maybe grown a little bit like, oh, that's maybe a little too early and whatnot, but it kind of works out in their favor. I think it gives them a chance to get healthy. So if they can just survive these first 5 weeks, I mean, even if they go in to that week 5 bye at like 2-2 or even 1-3, but you're able to get healthy after that. It gives them the opportunity to sort of go on a run and make some things happen and kind of be like last year where they were kind of that team that nobody wanted to play in the playoffs. I could definitely see a scenario like that, but right now it's just about not digging themselves too big of a hole that they can't get out of. And either way, even if if they are unable, or even if they do start 0-3, I don't think this is a team that's going to just lay down and quit.
No, for sure. I mean, you look at a lot of the years in the past, and even the Super Bowl run when they had the ugly November where they couldn't win a game in November. They went on a 4-game losing streak, and yet they were able to overcome that. Get to the playoffs, beat San Francisco at home. And then get to the Super Bowl and win the Super Bowl. Like they had a lot of controversy then as far as injuries and stuff goes, and they were able to overcome that. So this is a team that is able to beat the odds and be able to overcome those challenges. The problem is the thing that I think most people don't realize, and I know we've had this O-line shift over the last 2 weeks, is that we still have more starters on the O-line than we did back in the 2022 season, where we were rotating second and third and fourths. We were bringing in off the street firefighters and bringing them in and putting them on our offensive line. So this is a little bit different than that. It's still worrisome that hopefully Havenstein can stay healthy. Dotson has his foot thing that's going on right now. So making sure that those players stay healthy, and I think McVay needs to make sure that he's bringing in the additional help to kind of prevent additional injuries.
Definitely. It's going to be interesting to see how this team responds. I'm like I said, I'm cautiously optimistic that they respond the right way and can kind of get this thing back on track. But yeah, we'll see. This is an opponent where the Rams haven't had success against in the past. They did beat them in Week 18 last year, so hopefully that gives them a little bit of confidence. But yeah, definitely going to be a big week and an interesting one.
Yeah, for sure. It's going to be good. It's going to be loud. Like I said, if you live in the LA area, please go to SoFi. Please pack the stadium. Ashton will be there this weekend, so be on the lookout for him. But I think this is going to be a good game to watch. It's going to be a lot better than this past week. So yeah. But I think we will wrap this week's episode of the East Coast Rams podcast up. Blaine, thank you so much for joining me as my special co-host. for this episode. Do you want to just tell people how they can keep up with you?
Yeah, no, thanks for having me on. I always enjoy coming on the East Coast Rams podcast. I always have a good time. But yeah, you can find me over on turfshowtimes.com, putting out a lot of content out over there. And then also you can follow me on Twitter at bgrisaktst.
Awesome. Yeah, please make sure you go to Turf Show Times. They have some great articles out there from all of their crew. But I have a special place for Blaine's articles, so really appreciate all the hard work that he does with them. Like I said, it's going to wrap it up. Please make sure that you like and follow our podcast. You can find us on X at East Coast Rams. You can find us on YouTube, youtube.com/East Coast Rams. On Instagram and Threads, we are East Coast Rams Pod. Make sure you like, subscribe, follow us on Apple Podcast and on Spotify. With that, we're out of here. Whose house? Rams house.